Begin today at the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis towards the bottom of the Yamad. Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Mi Shenoda ben Nazir. Person that took upon himself to be a Nazir and then V'nishal l'chacham. Goes to a Chacham to get a heta for this. So, I explained already before, because in this Mishnah it brings both the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, there's no such a thing as getting a heta for Naziris. So when the Mishnah says that he went to get a heta for the Naziris, what it means is he went to ask the Rav that maybe the way he accepted the Naziris upon himself, the language he used originally was not good. So therefore the Naziris never took effect. What happened? Nava Osrei. So the Chacham says, no, it's Osr. The Naziris is good and he has a Naziris in effect. Now, but this individual, for all this time, till he came to be Mata his Naziris, wasn't really keeping his Naziris. He was drinking wine and he wasn't careful with his Naziris. But nevertheless, Moine Misha Shanodar. He counts his days of his Naziris from when he originally accepted upon himself the Naziris. He doesn't have to now start counting new days of his Naziris because only now he's keeping his Naziris. No, he can include already the days that he counted from before. Nishal l'chacham. What's if he asks, he requests a heta from a chacham and v'tirai? And the chacham now says, yeah, your Naziris is absolved. You never had a Naziris. And now what happened? He already had an animal that he set aside for the carbon of his Naziris. Now that it turns out that he never was a Nazir, this animal can go out and it grazes amongst the herd of the animals. In other words, it becomes chulin. It turns out that it's a mistake. It never was a carbon. So now based on this, this is a halacha that everybody agrees with, even Beis Shammai. So Omru Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, they asked Beis Shammai a question on the first mission that we learned in this Perek. What was the mission we learned yesterday? That Beis Shammai said that when you are makdish a behema betos, the hektish does take effect. He said that the black ox should become hektish, and then the white ox is the one that came out of his house. So even though it was a mistake, the hektish betos takes effect. So now Beis Hillel asks Beis Shammai in that. So iyat meidim bezeh. Won't you agree over here regarding this case when the person had a behema and the Naziris turns out not to be a Naziris? Shahu hektish tos. So this is also a case where the hektish was a tos. And over here the halacha is that because it's a mistake, the animal grazes amongst the rest of the herd of animals and it's not hektish at all. If that's the halacha here, because it was a mistake, why shouldn't it be the same regarding any hektish betos? So why do you say that by our other cases of hektish betos, the hektish does take effect? So Beis Shammai didn't answer this question directly, but Beis Shammai says, I have a question for you. I have a source for what I said. Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, won't you agree to me to another example where we see that a hektish betos takes effect? Where is that? A person that makes a mistake, this is the halacha of Ma'aser Behema. Ma'aser Behema, you have all the animals in the barn lined up and they walk out of the door and you count 1, 2, 3 until you come to 10th, and the 10th one you hit with a stick that has a red paint in it and you say that's the 10th one and that it's Kodesh, that becomes a Ma'aser Behema. Now, but what happens though, a person that made a mistake, and he calls the 9th animal as the 10th, or Olasiri Chi, and then the 10th, the one that's supposed to really be 10th, he calls that the 9th. Olachad Asa Asiri, and the 11th he calls the 10th. Shehu Mekudesh. The halacha there is, and this is learned from Sukkim, that nevertheless, even though it was a mistake, but it becomes holy. It becomes hektish. So here you see that there's a hektish betos, it's the 9th or the 11th, and nevertheless, he calls it the 10th, and it becomes hektish. So Beis Hillel responds to this, you can't learn out from there. That's a special Gzeiras HaKosov that only applies by Ma'aser Behema, and it applies specifically if you made the wrong count regarding the 9th and the 11th, but not any other ones. As Beis Hillel explains here, Beis Hillel says, Lo yashevet kitshai. It's not the fact that the person with his stick hit the 9th or the 11th and called it the 10th and it was a mistake, so we're going to say from here there's a rule that any hektish that was by mistake will take effect. That's not what it is. Because what if he made a mistake and he put that he hit with his shevet, the 8th one, and he said that the 8th is the 10th and it should be Ma'aser Behema, or Vashnei Masar, or the 12th, that the 12th should be Ma'aser Behema. Shema Asa Klum, do you think he did anything? Everybody knows that over there the halacha is that the 8th or the 12th, if he made this mistake, will not become Ma'aser Behema. So what's the point? Ella Kosuf shekiddush asiri. The same pasuk that in the Torah says that if you're makdish the 10th one, that one becomes ma'aseh be'emeh. Hu kiddush hachi v'sachadasa. There's a pasuk that it's learned out from that says that dafke, the 9th and the 11th, if you hit it and you call it the 10th, that it becomes hektish. So that's a special gzeiras hakosov. Not because there's a general rule. We can learn from there that any hektish betos will take effect. Okay, so going back now to the first halacha in the Mishnah, when a person accepted Naziris upon himself and he wasn't keeping his Naziris, and he went to get a heter from the Rav, and the Rav says, no, your Naziris is a real Naziris, you got to continue keeping his Naziris. So what did the Mishnah say? He could already include the count of the previous days in his Naziris, even though he wasn't keeping his Naziris properly. So the Gemara, Mani Masnisen, who's our Mishnah going according to Loy Rabbi Yasi, V'loy Rabbanon, doesn't fit not with what Rabbi Yasi said, and not with what Rabbanon said in such a kind of situation. The Tanya, we learned in Abraise, Mi Shenodar V'ovar Al Nazirus. A person that made a neder, he accepted upon himself Naziris, but he transgressed, he wasn't keeping his Naziris. So, Ein is Skakin Loy, Elam Kain, Meine Bem Iser, Kiyamim Shenog Bem Heter. We're not going to be niskaktim, we're not going to come to him and see, that is, if he could get a heter for this Naziris, or if he cannot get a heter for this Naziris, unless he's going to begin keeping his Naziris like it was from the beginning. In other words, those days that he kept his Naziris, or if not he kept, those days that he was a Nazir, and he did not keep his Naziris, don't count. If he's going to have to start over again counting his Naziris. In other words, let's say, for example, this person had 100 days of Naziris and 40 days of his Naziris passed, and he didn't keep the halacha of Naziris. What happens? He's going to have to start counting again from the beginning, his whole Naziris. Rabbi Yasi says, Dayoy shloishim yoim. No, a person that didn't keep his Naziris doesn't have to start keeping his entire Naziris over again. It's enough that he keeps 30 days of Naziris again. So even if he had a very big Naziris, it doesn't matter. For whatever Naziris he didn't keep properly from before, 30 days Naziris he has to keep over again. Okay, that's Gzeirim B'Darabbanan. Okay, so what do you see over here? Person that didn't keep his Naziris, you're not going to say that he could just then continue going and include all those days. Either he has to count all those days that he didn't keep over again, or at least 30 days he has to count over again. So the Gemara says, and now here, the Girsa in the Gemara says one way, but we're going to go according to the Girsa of the Taisus and the Rosh, which is different than what it says in our Gemara. If our Mishnah goes according to the Rabbanan, Kashye Naziris Merubah. We have a question from what the Rabbanan said when a person accepts upon himself a long Naziris, and there's many days of those Naziris that he did not keep, and he has to redo all those days of Naziris. And our Mishnah says, no, you could just continue going. If our Mishnah would go according to Rabbi Yasi, Kashye Naziris Muetes. It's a question from Rabbi Yasi's opinion when you have the minimum of Naziris. What's the minimum of Naziris? 30 days. Person accepts upon himself a stam Naziris 30 days, and he wasn't keeping his Naziris properly. Even if he comes all the way to the end of his Naziris, Rabbi Yasi says you have to keep all 30 days over again. How does our Mishnah say that this person just could just continue going when he sees that the Rav tells him that the Naziris is asr, so he just continues going? And for the Gemara, we're going to have to change the pshat of our Mishnah. It could go either according to Rabbi Yasi or according to the Rabbanan, but we're going to have to change our understanding of the Mishnah. If you want, I can say to you that our Mishnah is Rabbi Yasi. If you want, say Rabbanan, that our Mishnah goes according to the Rabbanan. If you want, say that our Mishnah goes like Rabbi Yasi, kan b'neziris merubah and kan b'neziris muetes. In our Mishnah, it was talking about a person that took upon himself a Naziris that's longer than 30 days. Let's say a Naziris of 100 days. And when it said in our Mishnah that he continues counting, Itake did not mean kipshutai, that he continues counting without having to make up any of the days that he missed before because he didn't keep his Naziris. He is going to have to make up 30 days. But he's not going to have to make up all the days of the Naziris that he didn't keep before. So let's say the person before, already 60 days passed of his Naziris that he didn't keep. He's not going to have to re-keep all 60 days of Naziris. 30 days of that Naziris, he's going to have to count over again. That's what our Mishnah meant when it said, Meine Misha Shanadar. It didn't mean taka literally that he could just continue going. He is going to have to keep 30 days of Naziris over again, but not fully. And kan b'naziris muetas. Here, when Rabbi Yossi says that he's going to have to keep his naziris all over again, it's because his entire naziris was 30 days. So even if he kept, or even if he already finished all his days of naziris by the end of 30 days, and he wasn't keeping his naziris properly, he's going to have to keep his entire naziris over again, because the whole naziris was just 30 days. Okay, so that's one pshat in our Mishnah. It goes according to Rabbi Yossi. So again, as I said, we're basically changing the pshat in our Mishnah. Before we thought that he doesn't have to keep anything over again. Now the Gemara is saying, no, at least 30 days. According to Rabbi Yossi, he will have to keep again. And if you want, say that our Mishnah goes like the Rabbanon. And the Mishnah is actually telling you that all the days that he didn't keep his Naziris properly, he has to count it all over again. Because loy teime, don't read the Lashon of our Mishnah, Misha Shenazar, that he can continue counting his Naziris from the first moment that he accepted upon himself. And all those days count. Ela Ema, rather read our Mishnah, Kimisha Shenazar, that he has to start counting his Naziris like from the beginning. Like from the beginning, he had the obligation to keep proper Naziris, and he did not keep proper Naziris. He can start counting from now, but now he's going to have to recount again proper Naziris, like Rabbanan say, every day he didn't keep, he's going to have to count over again. So Imam is changing the entire pshat of our Mishnah, that Adarabah, our Mishnah is saying that whatever day he didn't keep properly, he is going to have to start counting all over again. So what did the Mishnah say? What happens if it turns out that his entire Naziris was a mistake and he was makdish a carbon, so the carbon is not accepted at all, and therefore it could just go out and graze amongst the animals. Oh, the whole thing was a mistake. Right? And this is even though Beis Shammai himself holds when you makdish a behemah betos, so the hektish takes effect. But over here, it's different. Over here, Beis Shammai is basically saying, the Mishnah doesn't spell this out, but Kanira, the pshat over here is, Beis Shammai is saying, it's one thing to say that if you makdish a behemah betos, the hektish takes effect. But if the whole hektish is based on something, on a different condition, it's based on nazirus, and that nazirus was a complete mistake, then the behemah that you makdish for the purpose of the nazirus will not take effect. That's what Beis Shammai is saying over here. So now what does the Gemara say in this? So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Mida Beis Shammai nishma le Beis Hillel. From this that Beis Shammai says over here, we could learn out a halacha according to Beis Hillel, that lav Ramir Beis Shammai, didn't Beis Shammai say over here, that hektish betos have a hektish. That usually when you're makdish something and it's betos, the hektish does take effect. Kiv the gloi milse the lav shaper noza. But nevertheless, over here in this case, when it turns out that lav shaper noza, that there is no naziris here, even Beis Shammai agrees, teitze v'tire be'eda, that because the animal you were makdish it based on a naziris that came before this, and the naziris was all a mistake, so then the hektish for the naziris isn't worthless, it's nothing, and the animal could go out graze amongst all the rest of the herd of animals. So now similar, we could say this idea according to Beis Hillel in another situation. LeBeis Hillel nami, according to Beis Hillel as well, fagav da omri. Even though Beis Hillel said, Tmura betos have you tmura. The Gemara brought this in the beginning of the Perek, that there's psukim that we learn out from there. When it comes to tmura, the idea of tmura is when you're trying to exchange the kedusha of one animal to another, and the halach is that the original animal stays hektish and the second animal becomes hektish as well. And there the halach is that even a tmura, that you said something and it was a mistake, it's not what you meant, but nevertheless the tmura takes effect. So there, even Beis Hillel agrees that the tmura by mistake does take effect, but nevertheless, hanemili heiche de isei leike hektish. That's only if the first original hektish of the animal is here. Then I could say, based on that, the mistake of tmura when you want to exchange to another animal will also take effect. But what's if it happens? You made tmura to another animal, but now it turns out that the original animal that was hektish was uprooted. It was all a mistake. So then it's aker nami tmura. So then the tmura, which is an exchange of hektish, of the original hektish gets uprooted. So then, in such a case, I won't say that the mistake of tmura will take effect. Just like Beis Shammai says, even though he says that the mistake of hektish takes effect, but if the naziris, which is the source of your whole hektish, gets uprooted, so then the hektish doesn't take effect, so too by tmura, where Beis Hillel says that a mistaken tmura takes effect, but if the original hektish is uprooted, so then the tmura in such a case will not take effect. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was, Omamad, the Mishnah said, that if a person, when by Maisa Behema, instead of saying the 10th should be Maisa Behema, he said the 9th should be Maisa Behema, so over there it takes effect. Okay, so now the Gemara brings a machlokes about when do we say that this takes effect? Itmar, we learned the machlokes about this. So Meiser, this halacha of Meiser Behemeh, that you call the wrong animal, the 9th or the 11th, Meiser Behemeh. So Rav Nachman says that's only if it's ta'usai, if this happened by mistake. He miscounted. But v'loi kavanasai, not if he did this intentionally. If he goes and intentionally refers to the 9th as the 10th or the 11th as the 10th, it doesn't take effect. Rav Chisda v'Rabbi bar Rav Huna Amri, but Rav Chisda and Rabbi bar Rav Huna say ta'usai, when it was done by mistake, and the kolshkein kavanasai. And for sure, if you did it intentionally, that you referred to the 9th or the 11th as the 10th, you were doing it b'chavana, that's actually more of a koyach that the hektish should take effect. So therefore, there's no difference. By mistake, kavana, either way it'll take effect. Okay, so now the question is, how does this affect the pshat of our Mishnah? Beis Shammai was bringing this as an example or as a source for his halacha that from Meiser Behemah you could learn out that B'chlal hektish b'tos takes effect. So now Amal Rav Nachman, so Rav says to Rav Nachman, Lid yidach da'amret. Your opinion, what did you say? Ta'usai v'loi kavanasai. That by Meiser Behemah, when you call the wrong animal the 10th, the 9th or the 11th, the 10th, that's only if it was done by mistake, not if it happened intentionally. So if so, the Ka'amri Beis Shammai leBeis Hillel, when Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, they were trying to bring a source for their halacha, for their opinion from here. And what did Beis Shammai say? Would you not agree to me? That when you call the 9th the 10th, or the 10th the 9th, and it's the 11th that you call the 10th. So in such a case, if you call 9th, 10th, and 11th, all of them the 10th, all of them will become hektish. And so therefore, Beis Shammai said, from here is a source that every hektish b'tos takes effect. And v'yishtiku Beis Hillel. And Beis Hillel was quiet. Beis Hillel did not answer this source that Beis Shammai brought. Now, even though Beis Hillel did give an answer, right? But Beis Hillel did not give the answer that the Gemara is going to say right now, that the source doesn't begin in the first place. What did Beis Hillel say? Beis Hillel said that no, that from the 12th and the 8th, I see that you can't compare to that. But the Gemara here is saying, no, Beis Hillel didn't have to bring from the 12th and the 8th. Beis Hillel could have answered right over here from this itself. Leimru lahain. Beis Hillel should have answered, Ma'ala Meiser. You can't learn out from Meiser, because you see right here that Meiser is unique. How? Shekain ein kadosh bekavana. That over here, the fact that the 9th or the 11th would become hektish, if a person intentionally wants to be makdish the 9th and the 11th to say that they are the 10th, it doesn't work. It only works if it's a mistake. Now, this is a very unusual concept. It's the only time where you find such a thing that a hektish bekavana is not hektish. Dafka hektish by mistake is a hektish. By regular hektish, there's such a thing that if you makdish something by kavana, it's not hektish, but by mistake it is. No such a thing. So the fact that over here you see that this is a unique thing, that dafka, if this was done by mistake, then the 9th and the 11th will become hektish, that itself is already a good enough of a reason that Beis Hillel should tell Beis Shammai, don't learn out from here a general rule to every hektish, that if you made a hektish betos, that it should become hektish. Over there it's a unique thing, that it's dafka betos, so that itself shows that it's a special gzeirus hakasuv. That's what Beis Hillel should have answered according to Rav Nachman, that says that it's only if it was betos and not if it was b'chavana. Rav Shimi Barashi says, no, there's a reason why Beis Hillel didn't want to answer this. Why? Here's the reason why Beis Hillel can't answer this. They didn't say this answer because Adarabah, Beis Shammai would say that it's a kal v'chomer. The kal v'chomer, I could learn out now from Meiser Behemah regarding this concept of hektish betos. I could learn it out as a kal v'chomer, and I would say the following kal v'chomer. Ma Meiser she'ein kodesh b'kavana. When it comes to Meiser Behemah, so being makdish the 9th or the 11th, b'chavana, if you're intentionally trying to be makdish the 9th or the 11th as Meiser Behemah, it's not going to work. But nevertheless, kodesh betos. But if you do it with a mistake, it does work. Hektish, where we see that the koyach to be makdish is more powerful, because shekodesh b'kavana, you can be makdish intentionally, like kol shekain. So for sure, if you're makdish by mistake, it should work. So Adarabah, Beis Shammai will respond, I can learn it out from there with a kal v'chomer. But the Gemara concludes and says that this is not true. Beis Shammai would never respond this way, because this is not a proper kal v'chomer. V'loihi. This kal v'chomer is not a kal v'chomer at all. Why? Because the hektish bedaite the more tali. By hektish is always with the das of the owner. How does hektish work? The whole concept of hektish is, and this is learned from a pasuk actually, that the person has to have proper das in order to be makdish something. There's no such a thing as hektish by mistake. So what are you making me a kal v'chomer and telling me that I find that by ma'aseh behemah the hektish works for the 9th and the 11th, that it becomes hektish when you call it the 10th, it works dafke by mistake. And that becomes what? That becomes a kal v'chomer for regular hektish? Adarabah. That just shows you that ma'aseh behemah is this unique thing that's different than regular hektish. Regular hektish works dafke b'chavana, and mistaken hektish does not take effect. Ma'aseh behemah is a unique thing that mistaken hektish of 9th and 11th takes effect. So adarabah, you can't learn out from there at all. So this sort of remains a question of Rav Nachman's opinion, that if you're going to say that this whole halacha of 9th and 11th becoming hektish as the 10th is only by mistake, so then it's clear from this itself that you can't learn out to regular hektish, where the hektish is dafke b'kavana, it's b'daita de moretali.
So Rav Nachman wants to say that the case of kosef is even if you did it on purpose?
No, that was the other opinion. Rav Nachman says that the gzeres hakosef is dafke by mistake, take. Of Chisda and Rabbi Bar Avhuna, which we actually paskin like, that's what it looks like, they say that it's whether it's by mistake or even b'chavana. You learn from the psukim over there, b'negei to ma'aseh behemah, that even b'chavana, the ma'aseh behemah will take effect on the 9th and the 11th. But even according to their opinion, Beis Hillel answered in the Mishnah, it's still exeris hakosef. We can't learn out from there, v'haraya, because when it comes to the 8th or the 12th, it doesn't work. So sof, the answer remains the same point. That Beis Hillel says you can't learn out this concept of hektish b'tos from ma'aseh behemah, because there it's exeris hakosef. Zok Heilige Mishnah, Misha Noda ben Nazir. Another situation of Nazirus, where a person is sort of a mistake in this Nazirus. A person accepted upon himself Nazirus. Now he goes to bring his behemoth that he wants to use for the karbonis of the conclusion of his Nazirus. He discovers that the animal that he thought that would be available for him, that he owns, it got stolen. So now he's all disappointed. He only took upon himself this Nazirus because he has this behemoth available for himself. And now he doesn't want the Nazirus at all. Where's he going to get a behemoth? Now, if when the behemoth was not yet stolen, that's when he accepted upon himself this Nazirus. So at the point when he accepted the Nazirus, the behemoth was available for him. Harei Nazir. His Nazirus is a Nazirus. He can't come now to the Chacham and get a heter for his Nazirus, because now he tells the Chacham, look, now my behemoth got stolen, so I don't want the Nazirus anymore. That's not a proper heter. But if it turns out that at the time that he took the Nazirus upon himself, the behemoth was already stolen, then ain't a Nazir. Then he's not going to be a Nazir. What's the basis of this concept? We learned this already in Masechta in the Darim, that when you request a heter for any neder, and over here for Nazirus, you have to have a Pesach, that the Chacham says to you, if you would have known so and so what happened, or if you would have known while you made the neder that so and so is the situation, would have you made this neder? And the person says no, so that's the Pesach for his Nazirus or his neder. But you can't have a Pesach, according to the way we paskin, you can't have a Pesach for something which is nailad. A new thing that happened later, and a new thing that's not common to happen. It's not shchiach to happen that happened later. That's not a valid Pesach for your Nazirus. For this person's animal to get stolen is not something which is shchiach, and it only happened later, so that's not a Pesach. So his Nazirus will remain a Nazirus. Sagt the Mishnah, V'zu tos ta Nachum Amadai. This is a mistake that Nachum Amadai made. K'sha'olu Nazirim in Agoyla, there were Nazirim that were living outside of Eretz Yisrael in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and they accepted their Nazirus outside of Eretz Yisrael. They came up from the Galus, they came up and they wanted to now conclude their Nazirus and bring the Karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash. And what happened? The Matzu Beis HaMikdash Charav. And they found that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and they can't conclude the Nazirus. They're going to remain Nazirim forever. What are they going to do? So Nachum said to them, he wanted to find a Pesach to remove the whole Nazirus. He says, Ilu Yisem Yedim, Shebeis HaMikdash Charav. Had you known that the Beis HaMikdash would have been destroyed, Yisem Nazrim, would you accept upon yourself this Nazirus? Amru Leilai. So they said, no, of course not. So V'hitira Nachum Amadai. So Nachum Amadai said, if so, that's a Pesach, that you never would accept the Nazirus under such circumstances. But when this story came to the Chachamim, they disagreed. And they said, Omru, Chachamim then said, or Omru Loi, they said to Nachum Amadai, Kol Shenazar, Achel Echarev Beis HaMikdash, any of these people that accepted their Nazirus, and it was before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, so Nazir. He is going to be a Nazir. Why? Because this that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed is a new situation that developed later, Noilad, and it's not common. It's not something they expected to happen at that time. So therefore, that's not a Pesach for Naziris. But those individuals that came from Chutz La'aretz and they didn't even hear about the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed while they were accepting the Naziris upon themselves, that's a proper Pesach, because that's not Nailad. They didn't know what happened while they were accepting the Naziris, so ain't a Nazir. They will not be a Nazir. Omar Rabbe, so Rabbe says, now here the Gemara brings the source of this, we learned this in Mishnah and Nedarim, that there this was actually an argument, whether this could be used as a Pesach or not. So Rabbe says that over here in our Mishnah, the Chachamim, all the Chachamim, paskin this way against Nacham Amadeh, to such an extent they said Nacham Amadeh made a mistake. So now Rabbi says, based on this, Shotfu Rabbanon la Rabbi Eliezer, the Rabbanon, they washed away the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, V'oikme b'shitisayu. And they brought him over, that he also agreed to the opinion of the Chachamim. We don't find over here that Rabbi Eliezer argues about this. Even though originally, there's a Mishnah Nedarim where Rabbi Eliezer did argue. The Tanan, there the Mishnah said, Poischen ben Noilad, that a person, Rabbi Eliezer said, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that you could use a Nailad, a new situation that develops later as a Pesach for the Neder. The Chachamim Ma'isra. And Chachamim say you can't use it. Over here we see when it came to this story at the end of the Chorban Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi Eliezer agreed to the Chachamim. Rava said, Falgav. Now there's another way though, how you could make a Pesach for this Neder. How? The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed later. It's something that developed later, so there's no way. So that's it. These people have to be Nazirim forever. So here, Rava says there's still another loophole. There's another way how you could find a Pesach for their neder. You have to do Pesach has to be a little bit different. Even though the Chachamim said that you can't use as a Pesach something that develops later that you didn't expect at all to happen. But you could use that, the conditions of what happens later. The word t'nai here doesn't mean like it usually means a condition. I mean, the conditions of this new developed situation, you could utilize that in a way that you will be able to have for a Pesach. How is that? Hey chedami. Amri lahain. You can say to these people that have these naziros, the chacham comes and tells them, Ilu asa inish. Va'ama lachain. If a person would have came to you while you're accepting the naziris upon yourself, then that a person would have came in and advised you, the Chad of Beis Hamikdash, that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, or that it's going to be destroyed. A person is telling you now that don't take upon themselves this neder because it's not a good idea. Mi avan and would have you listened to that advice at that point? Would have you accepted upon yourself the neder? So this is a kind of Pesach that works. Because over here, the Pesach is not based on a Noila that happens later that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed. It's a Pesach based on B'shas Maaseh, when you're making the neder. If someone would have advised you while you're making the neder that it's not a good idea because the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed or it's going to be destroyed, would have you listened to that advice? And you say, yeah, I would have listened to that advice. And such kind of advice is not considered to be uncommon. It's possible that a person is B'chlal Naziris is never such a good idea. So if someone would give you an advice not to accept upon yourself this Naziris, that's a pretty common thing. And so this is a kind of Pesach, which is not later, it's not Nailet, it's B'shas Maaseh, and it's something which is common, so it works. Rav Yosef, but not Rav Yosef said another thing. If I would have been over there when the Chachamim said that the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed is a nailad, and what kind of a nailad is it? It's a new development which is uncommon, unexpected to happen, and therefore you can't use that as a Pesach for the Naziros. But if I would have been there, Hava min Elohain, I would have said Hoksiv. There's a pasuk where it says, it repeats the same words 3 times. Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heima. This is over there in the Nevuah of Yirmiyah, where he speaks about the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed, and the people, they didn't believe Yirmiyah, and then they said, even if this Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed, but we'll rebuild a second Beis Hamikdash. And even if the second Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed, we'll rebuild a third Beis Hamikdash. Which means, you learn from this pasuk, Zeh Mikdash Rishayin and Mikdash Sheni. So we see from here that they basically were expecting the second Beis Hamikdash to get destroyed. They knew it's going to get destroyed, and they said, okay, we'll rebuild a third Beis Hamikdash. So how can you say, if so, this is the Beis Hamikdash gets destroyed, you can't consider it to be a new development which is not expected. It's expected. They knew this. So why are we saying that it's not a good Pesach? So the Gemara says, Nehidi Yadin Lohin the Yachrayv. Yeah, it's true that Taka knew that it will get destroyed, but Mi Yadin Leimasai. Did they know? Are they able to expect when it's going to happen? They don't know when it's going to happen. So therefore it's still considered to be a new development that's not expected. So therefore it's not a good Pesach. Amar Abaye, but Abaye says, not of L'chayre of Yosef is still right. V'lo yadin le'emes, did they not know when the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed? V'aksiv, there's a pasuk that says, Shvuayim shivim nechtach al amech val ir kotshech. That Shvuayim shivim means 7 times 70. Is it 7 times 70 or it's
70.
Or it's I think it's
70 times 7?
it has to come to 490.
77.
The point is, it comes to 490 years. They knew that from after the first Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, that 490 years later, the second Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed. That was a cheshbon they had. So they knew which year the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed. So if so,
Is that true?
Yeah, that's what it says there. They knew. So then, if so, they expected the Beis Hamikdash should be destroyed. So then, how could you say that when they accepted upon themselves the Naziris, that this is a new naila, this is a new development that they couldn't expect? So the Gemara answers, but still, this is considered to be something they didn't know exactly when, because va'akati miya dinan b'hai yoime. Did they know exactly which day in the year the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed? They knew in that year, but from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, it's a very long time. You accept upon yourself a plain Naziris for 30 days. They didn't expect the Beis Hamikdash should be destroyed then. Could be they were just in the Beis Hamikdash, and the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed in the Chodesh Av, later in the year, or whenever they took upon themselves the Naziris. I mean, they must have taken upon themselves the Naziris close enough, right, to that time. Actually, so they must have taken upon themselves the Naziris later on in the year. But they didn't expect the Beis Hamikdash should be destroyed right then. They didn't know which day it was. It's a hard answer of the Gemara to understand, because like I said, they knew it's going to be in that year. And B'Payel, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed pretty close to the end of the year. Chodesh Av. There's only one more month left to the year. So this is something that they didn't expect. I mean, they knew it's either Av or Elul. So I mean, okay, but nevertheless, that's what the Gemara says. Because they didn't know the exact day, so when the Beis Hamikdash ends up being destroyed, it's considered to be a nailat, something that they didn't expect to happen at that time. Okay, we'll stop over here.